purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person can deny. Digadonken sin fry. No person can deny. Digadonken sin fry.
Hello, I'm Howard Thompson, your host for this segment of Freethought Forum, a place where you are free to think about things and examine things. I'm glad to be here today at the invitation of Catherine Fahringer, the emeritus producer of the show. Today we have a topic of the Yugoslav Auschwitz and the Vatican, a book by Vladimir Dedijer, and I'm sure that the translator, who is my guest, Harvey Kendall, will tell me how badly I mutilated that pronunciation in just a few moments. I am editor of the Texas Atheist, which is an independent free email newsletter, and you'll get an address for that if you wish to subscribe later on. But first, let's have a few news updates. We have some local events. Ingersoll was remembered at the Comfort Rock. County threatens Freethinker Rock, and Comal County may fund religion. But first, let's go to local events, and we have a promotion tape about the local Freethinker Association of San Antonio, or Central Texas, regular meetings at the Cafe Latino, and I believe I have given them probably almost enough time to cue that up and play it.
Hi, I'm Don Lawrence. I want to invite you to come down to Cafe Latino. We have weekly discussions here on some pretty provocative subjects. It's no hold barred as far as the discussion goes. The Freethinkers Association of Central Texas has regular discussions here at We have discussions here every Wednesday night at 6:30, and then on Fridays at 12:30 just after noon. We talk about all kinds of interesting subjects. The one we just talked about tonight was more virgins in the volcano, how not to fix America. And basically the ground we covered was that in times of stress, a culture tends to do ritualistic things that may have no value. And we laugh at the natives who throw virgins in the volcano because we know that throwing virgins in the volcano doesn't help. But people do things like that in times of stress. So that was tonight. We will be talking about things like rabbis, priests, and pastors, why women need not apply. We've talked about subjects in the past like the crisis in Littleton and how religion makes young people crazy. All kinds of subjects that can be provocative, but the point is to get you to question your basic cultural beliefs and to consider that your mind may be stuck inside a box. We don't believe in the Freethinkers Association. I won't say everyone, we welcome everyone, but the majority of the people that attend our meetings don't find any evidence for the supernatural, for instance. We don't believe that there's credible evidence that there's any supernatural aspect to the world. And similarly, we find the evidence for an afterlife lacking. And we've talked about has a miracle ever occurred? Of course, there's no evidence that anything supernatural has ever occurred in the world. So we'd like for you to come down and talk to us. We're the Freethinkers Association of Central Texas. We welcome everybody. If you believe in the supernatural, if you believe there's some kind of God or supreme being, we're happy to talk to you about that. Most of us are agnostic or atheist, But we don't ridicule or humiliate or shun anyone. We'd be happy to have you come and talk to us about these kinds of subjects. So we'd like for you to come down and be with us again. We meet every Wednesday at 6:30 in the evening and every Friday at 12:30. Come down and meet us, and we'll be real happy to meet you and make you welcome. Thanks very much.
Thanks for that information, Don. I have up here a slide that does have some information about local contacts for the Freethinkers Association of Central Texas and the Texas Hill Country Freethinkers. Please feel free to contact these people if you want some more information or some specifics about their meetings. They do have newsletters that you can get in contact with. In the rest of our news, we gathered atheists and freethinkers in Comfort, Texas in July to honor the centennial of the death of Robert Ingersoll. He was a great Freethought orator and leader during the late 1800s. He was a colonel in the Civil War, a politician and attorney. We also gathered there to offer our support for the Freethinker Monument to honor the Freethinkers who founded Comfort. This is one of the controversial issues you may have heard about in the news. The county and the Chamber of Commerce are looking at having the rock removed. Of course, we think that it's a good thing that we should honor the founders of Comfort, Texas. The rock has been in place for almost a year. Our next little news item is about how the county and the Chamber of Commerce are threatening the rock in Comfort. They call it abandoned. They're raising funds to remove the rock, but donors, of whom I am one, and there's about 35 donors, oppose this. Over $5,000 was spent on the rock to put it in place before the Chamber of Commerce reneged on their agreement to have it there. And we think it ought to stay and be completed with its Texas Historical Commission marker as originally planned. And we're hoping that eventually the Chamber of Commerce will acknowledge that there are people who gave money for a project in their town that they will not talk to. Our next little news item is Comal County may fund a religious group. This is a possibility that's arisen. There is an evangelical group in Comal County, the Comal County Christian Pro-Life Group, that has asked the Comal County Commissioners for a $5,000 grant so that they can carry out their activities. If the Comal County Commissioners were to do this, this would be a clear violation of the First Amendment, which does guarantee separation of church and state. And we should note in our history that President James Madison did veto 2 bills during his presidency that would have given funds and land and to support churches, which lets you know that our founding fathers didn't think government should fund churches. Which brings us to our topic today and our guest, Harvey Kendall. Harvey Kendall has translated a book called The Yugoslav Auschwitz in the Vatican by Vladimir Dedijer, which is put out by Prometheus Books, and I'll give you a mailing address and a website for that later. Dedijer's book documents the years of World War II as the Croatian fascists, with the support and direction of the Roman Catholic Church, joined with the Nazi occupation of Yugoslavia in an effort to eradicate Orthodox Christians, Serbs, Bosnian Muslims, Jews, homosexuals, and political opponents. Harvey is the secretary for the Freethinkers Association of Central Texas. He translated the book, and we're glad to have him here today. Hi, Harvey.
Well, thank you.
Let's kick off the discussion by asking you how you found out about this book and how you came to be the translator.
That happened in, I think it was the spring of 1988. There was a convention of the American Atheists in San Diego, and I attended that convention. One of the speakers there was a German man who gave 2 talks, neither of which did I know anything about, but since I speak German and have German background, I attended those and I'm very happy that I did, because one of his talks had to do with this book that he had gotten published in German. The book was written originally in Serbo-Croatian, and it was published in Yugoslavia, but had very small circulation due to political reasons. And he got a hold of it and had it translated into German, and then I translated from the German to the English. I talked to that man. His name was Gottfried Niemitz, and I asked him if he had any intention of having it published in English, and he said that he wasn't able to find a translator, so I handed him my card, and all started from there.
Well, it's one of those things that happens when people get together and have common interests. One of the themes of the book, and I have not read the book, I've just read a few notes, so you'll be educating me. This will all be new to me. One of the themes of the book, I gather, is the Vatican's participation with the Nazi occupation of Yugoslavia during World War II, and how they worked with Croatians and the fascist forces to carry out the same types of genocidal, maybe is a good word, activities against certain groups in Yugoslavia. Has there been any response from the Vatican to this that you know of offhand?
I know of absolutely nothing. I think that it's only typical that the church authorities, when they're backed into a corner, they say nothing, and it usually gets them off the hook.
Well, why don't you describe some of the things that the book describes that are disturbing in terms of how people are hurt and loss of freedoms, and what happens when we have a tyranny that this is an example of, I think.
Well, we should understand, I think, first of all, a little bit about the political situation. There was a man in former Yugoslavia who in 1929, I believe it was, founded a fascist party. It's called the Ustasha, and Ustasha means rebel in Serbo-Croatian. And it, as I said, was fascist. It advocated the eradication of all non-Catholics and all non-Croatians from Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia had been a country only a short time. It was founded only after World War I under a king. They had a king and a parliamentary situation. And King Alexander, in about 1918, proclaimed a dictatorship and dismissed the parliament and tried to unite the country, and for the first time called it Yugoslavia. That irritated, of course, Rome, the Vatican, because the split between the Eastern Orthodox and the Roman Catholic Church was quite clear, and the Eastern Orthodox, if under a state of Yugoslavia, would be able to move closer to Rome. And this terrified the Pope and the Vatican, and with the help of the Vatican, this man whose name was Ante Pavelić, established the Ustasha party and began his pogroms against the Serbs.
Now, just so that our audience is clear, the Croatians are Roman Catholics, the Serbs are Orthodox Christians, and it was primarily the Catholic Serbs against the Orthodox Christians. That was their major activity?
Yes. If we can have a look at this map here, if you see in the upper left-hand corner, Slovenia and Croatia, these were primarily the Roman Catholic areas of the country. And then to the far east is Serbia. Serbia was the home of the Eastern Orthodox Yugoslav branch there. In between is Bosnia-Herzegovina, which we heard a lot about a few years ago in the battles between the Croatians and the Bosnians. This area of the country was occupied primarily by a mixture of Serbs and Muslims. So we have the Roman Catholics here, Muslims here, and the Eastern Orthodox over there.
So this is primarily, in some ways, kind of a classical religious conflict that we see pop up again and again in human history.
Yes, it is. It's territorial, a matter of survival, one church, one religion over another.
Well, after the Nazis came to power and conquered Yugoslavia, then they began working with the Croatians. Were the Croatians their puppet government?
Yes, it was. The government in Croatia was called the Free State of Croatia under this gentleman, Pavelić. I hesitate to call him gentleman. But he was, first of all, he had a history of murder. He murdered the king of Yugoslavia, and that took place in Paris. The French government tried him in absentia because he had disappeared, and they tried him in absentia and sentenced him to death. The Yugoslav government also tried him in absentia and sentenced him to death. So where was Pavelić during this time? In Rome. He was being harbored by the Vatican and by the Mussolini fascist government there. In 1941, when the Nazis moved into Zagreb, which is in the capital of Croatia, Pavelić then was named by the Pope and by Mussolini as being the head of the state, this new state that they called the Free State of Croatia.
Okay, now, so this man had a history of brutality. What sort of activities did he carry out in the areas that he controlled? That, you know, like midnight knock on the door and rounding people up, putting them in trucks, concentration camps, beatings, what sort of things happened?
It was everything that you heard about the Nazis and their pogroms against the Jews. It's just simply there was a different object here. Pavelić's object was to destroy all Serbs within his domain, and that would have been through the northeastern part of the country. And his first task was to eradicate the Yugoslav army. There had been a Yugoslav army set up by this king, Alexander, and it was still in operation. And the Nazis and the fascist government in Croatia set about, first of all, to eliminate it. In order to do so, they enlisted the help of the church. It was primarily clerics.
Catholic Church, when you say church.
The Roman Catholic Church, yes. It was primarily the Roman Catholic clerics who were responsible for going out to these encampments where the Yugoslav army was and disarming them. And they did it rather peacefully. They just simply took away their arms and turned them over to the Ustasha military.
Well, that's quite a bit of direct involvement by Catholic clergy then. What was the Pope saying or doing as these things were going on, or not doing, maybe, that were indicative of his knowledge and awareness? And we're talking Pope Pius XII here.
Yes, Pope Pius XII. It is very difficult to pinpoint anything that Pope Pius XII did except this background support that he gave to the Ustasha. There were constantly delegations coming from Zagreb to the Vatican, and they would often do things like performances of a choral work or recitations of poetry and so forth, and then that gave the Pope the opportunity to praise them. And there are only a few instances where there is in writing with the Pope's signature on it anything that says that he supported what they were doing.
Okay.
But by tacit agreement, it's quite clear that he was supporting.
So basically, it sounds like there was what we might call cultural exchanges. The Pope was friendly to them. He praised them, and there's a little bit of writing to indicate that he was aware of what was going on, and that called forth from him no condemnation of these people or their actions.
That's about it. Now, close under his authority were other dignitaries in the Vatican who did arrange to have money sent to the Ustasha and to sign agreements with the Ustasha and so forth.
Well, can you give us an idea of how many people this affected in the areas controlled by the Croatian fascists, and numbers of people sent to concentration camps, killed or missing, that sort of thing?
Okay, the figures vary, the same as they do for Nazi Germany, but the United States claimed that there were 200,000 Serbs, Gypsies, Muslims, homosexuals, and general opponents of the state who were slaughtered by the Ustasha. The Belgrade government, Belgrade being the capital of Serbia, claims there were 800,000 people. So someplace between 200,000 and 800,000 people. There were about a dozen concentration camps, the most notorious of which was the one called Jasenovac, which was located here in northeastern Bosnia, not far from Sarajevo. And there is where we have most of the documentation about what happened. There were trials, hearings held after the war up through 48, I think they finally ended. And that's where the author of this book, Vladimir Dedijer, got most of his information. It's from the transcripts of those trials.
Okay, so we have a pattern that we are familiar with from the Nazi activities, the state police, the concentration camps, with the added element of the Roman Catholic clergy apparently supporting and to some degree participating in...
to a large degree.
To a large degree. Were there any Roman Catholic clergy indicted as co-conspirators or charged?
Yes, there were. The primary Roman Catholic cleric was Stepinac, who was the Archbishop of Zagreb, and he directed the activities of the Ustasha military all through the 3 or 4 years of the war, and is responsible directly for ordering the slaughter of so and so many people and so forth. After the war, at first he was not arrested. He felt comfortable in the protection of the Vatican and thought undoubtedly that nobody would ever touch him. He was finally arrested and tried and convicted of these terrible atrocities, and was sentenced to a mere 16 years of hard labor, of which he served 5, and then he was released. And after he died, as a matter of fact, in October of last year, 1998, the Vatican, the Pope went to Zagreb and held a ceremony of beatification for him, which is the first step towards sainthood.
So Pope Pius XII was going to make a saint out of the person who was heavily involved in directing activities for the Roman Catholic Church that led to the deaths of 200 to 800,000 people.
This was Pope John the 23rd.
John the 23rd later did this.
Did the beatification.
So this was a saintly act then, I guess, possibly by the lights of the Roman Catholic Church.
It was protecting the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church.
So we have in the Free State of Croatia then a kind of a melding or blending together of church and state, as it were, to where it would be hard, it sounds like,
it was totally inseparable.
To divide them out.
I think that Pavelić rarely did anything without consulting Stepinac.
Okay. Well, this is one of those things, we can sit here and talk about, but we know there's horrors that underlie it. Are there any incidences that struck you and stuck in your mind particularly?
The 2 times there were huge massacres held in churches. These were Roman Catholic churches where Stepinac had ordered that the villagers and surrounding people in these 2 different places be brought to the church and converted. That was his line. The official task of the Ustasha government was to convert 1/3 of the Serbs to Roman Catholicism, to export 1/3 of them, and to murder 1/3 of them. And Stepinac had a hand in this, and he often provided the orders. And these people were herded into the church, and they were first of all sent through this ceremony of a conversion, where they signed certificates, and these were put on file. And then the church was set afire, and they were burned. Or that was in one instance. In the other instance, they were clubbed to death by wooden mallets. Some 700 or 800 people in one afternoon.
Was any rationale offered for why converting people and then killing them?
It gave the church numbers. You know, they had more people that they could say were Roman Catholics.
And I guess there's always the rationale that they're converted, they've been saved, we're sending them straight to heaven before they recant.
Undoubtedly, undoubtedly.
Well, this sort of thing just always astounds me. We think of ourselves as kind of a civilized, modern world, and yet here, within our lifetimes, these things have happened. They're still happening in Yugoslavia. The Serbians are, having their inning, so to speak, and again, based a lot on religious.
I wanted to make it clear that my sympathies are neither with the Croatians nor the Serbs. These are people who are so hate-filled, I think there is no hope for them in our lifetimes to come to terms with these terrible backgrounds that they have.
Well, it's real tough. Has the Vatican ever said anything, any apology, acknowledgement, or anything to your knowledge?
No, quite the contrary. They are constantly honoring these criminals that did all of these terrible deeds. Pavelić, for instance, was allowed to escape. And this was arranged, believe it or not, by an agreement between the Pope, Bishop Spellman, who later became Cardinal Spellman, and the United States government. After the war, and Pavelić and thousands of other Ustasha military people were spirited off to South America. And Pavelić lived there until 1959 under his own name, perfectly comfortable. And in 1959, he had a severe health problem, cancer, and he traveled to Spain. And there he was given a special blessing by Pope John the 23rd again, and he died there in the arms of the church.
So if you're a butcher for the church, you get protected. And my understanding is that Pope Pius XII is also on his route to becoming a saint of the Catholic Church also. I wanted to call attention to, I've put the address of Prometheus Books up here, where you can get a copy of the Yugoslav Auschwitz in the Vatican, and there's a website address there that's Prometheus Books. It would be fairly easy to find. When you tell Catholics this, what kind of response do you get?
Well, I haven't had much opportunity to argue with Catholics. My general feeling is that there is no arguing with people who have faith to back them up. You can't argue with faith. But logically, I have done things like this program and a few other talks that I have given, just simply exposing what's in the book. And Catholics stare at me, religious people in general just stare at me in wonder and go their own way. I think they're just simply excluding it from their minds. They don't want to know about it.
Well, our human brains can be very selective in what we pay attention to and what we ignore, and you're certainly jamming them in a spot they could worry about. Well, I want to thank you for being here, Harvey. I'm getting a timing there that tells me I probably better begin to wrap up. I've got a slide up here with the local contacts again for the Freethinkers Association of Central Texas and the Texas Hill Country Freethinkers. Feel free to contact them if you want information about their organizations or any of their meetings. I'm editor of the Texas Atheist. It's an independent free email newsletter, and you can subscribe just by sending me an email notice. And we're glad that you were here today, and we hope that we gave you some food for thought and that you are able to take the information away and make the best of it that you can, and choose what to think for yourself. But at least look at the evidence, and we'll be glad to see you next time on Freethought Forum. Thank you very much.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei, no person can deny. Die Gedanken